So, Donald, are you having fun? Are you having fun yet? Rob, are you having fun? Because I am not having fun having to listen to this jackass keep putting
Mhm.
his foot in his mouth with his 30 home runs and his 30 stolen bases that he promised us, giving up on the field on Derek Jeter Day of all days to just give up in front of the whole fan base on TV. And this guy is starting. He didn't have fun last year. What kind of jackass comment is that? Donald, you have the article with you. Of what give
Yeah.
us a little more insight to what our
Per
luxurious left field.
NJ.com. Yeah, per NJ.com. After looking in mirror, Yankees Aaron Hicks is over being mad at Aaron Boone fans and the world. What grounds does he have to be mad at anyone else other than himself? That's what I would start with. Okay, anyway, it starts with the misery, embarrassment, and anger from last fall has subsided. So has the pain. An off season of rehabbing his knee and honeymooning in Turks and Caicos, vacationing in Antigua, and playing with three kiddos back in Arizona has been a much needed cleanse. Sounds like he's had a lovely time. Well, what's the problem here? Antigua. We could all be so lucky, right? Yankees outfielder Aaron Hicks' head is back in the right place for the new baseball season. But the pain of September 9th lingers in the background. Hicks was mad at himself for missing those consecutive fly balls, mad at Yankee fans for turning against him. Beautiful. Beautiful. Everyone hates us. And anger with Aaron Boone for benching him. That one awful night at Yankee Stadium summed up Hicks' abysmal season, which ended with yet another injury 5 weeks later. He crashed into rookie teammate Cabrera, chasing a fly ball during the division series. Well into his fourth straight year of underperformance, Hicks was mired in a deep slump heading into the Yankees-Rays game. He was batting .212 and 119 in his last 28 games prior to that game. Hicks was getting booed every time he made an out during home games. He was the new Joey Gallo who'd mercifully escaped the wrath of Yankee Nation. Hicks was thinking of a change of scenery. Batting third and playing left, Hicks heard more boos from the packed crowd after ending the first inning by striking out. The crowd of 46,000 grew louder and more hostile when he whiffed again, stranding two base runners. And then when Wander Franco laced a deep fly ball that sailed directly along the left field line, Hicks had a long way to go, but used his speed to get a good read on the ball trajectory. Hicks was still sprinting and almost in the left corner when he reached out to make a grab, and then he dropped the ball. Thinking he'd misplaced a foul ball, he just stood there and stopped and looked at it. Then he heard the crowd, which exploded with taunts and insults. And with the baseball near his feet, Hicks looked up and saw three Rays sprinting around the bases with the ball in fair territory. This mistake generously scored a double, opened the floodgates of abuse, and Boone was relentless. And then it continued the next time he misplayed the very next ball sent his way when Randy Arozarena hit it his way, and he took the wrong turn. He turned left instead of right. Or he started right instead of left, and then the ball sailed over his outstretched glove. So the booing that ensued was never louder. After the inning, Hicks had one thought in his mind, atone, but Boone didn't give him the chance. This upset Hicks even more. And then Hicks goes on and talks about Aaron Boone here. Being taken out of the game, I felt I wasn't able to fight. I wanted to stay in the game and do something great. Well, yeah, you had plenty of opportunities earlier, bro, to do something great to help us back in it or win. Let me get out there. But Boone needed to protect me, he thought. But I didn't want that. So he's angry at Aaron Boone. He says this is Aaron Hicks' recollection of his conversation with Aaron Boone. Boone was, according to Aaron Hicks, Boone goes, "I'm sorry. I read the situation wrong. I'm really sorry. I understand what you're going through." And then Hicks was like, blah, 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 right?
But
Boone has a different recollection. He just goes, "I don't know if I said it like that." Boone added, "I don't know that I regret removing him from the game. It doesn't mean I made the right decision, but it was my decision to make. and one that I felt I had to make in the moment. It's as simple as that. That's fair. I can't argue with that. Sounds like Aaron Hicks is just being a big baby, which he has been his entire career. So we go through his injuries here, and there's mental anguish. He also was really angry at Boone for dropping him in the order and moving him to left field. So he sounds like he's got a lot of issues with Aaron Boone here.
Well, we have a lot of issues with him because he just
Yeah.
doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut.
Hicks allowed himself to get flustered over being asked to play some left field after being the Yankees starting center for 4 years. He also took offense to being dropped in the lineup. Definitely. Reflecting on it now, I was concerned about things I shouldn't be concerned about. I should have been playing the game, trying to win and all that. I felt I got myself wrapped up in the position, and I got really wrapped up in my performances too. So now, looking back, Hicks blames himself for everything. He thinks his 22 season was doomed because he didn't prepare properly. Well, that's a big fucking statement. During the abbreviated 3-week spring training that followed the lockout. Once I pretty much hit rock bottom, I actually started to have success. There was a time where I hit 3 home runs within a week span. I was starting to roll. Then the Tampa game came. So apparently he's got all over all that now. What happened last year happened. I'm healthy. I'm building. I'm trying to have a great season. Well, he seems like a big baby to start with. Like, doesn't sound like he's got a hell of a lot of respect for Aaron Boone. Quite openly talking about him like that, and then maybe possibly twisting his words after Boone benched him. Don't really like that necessarily either. And I just think that it's just a disgrace. Like, you read all that and you're thinking, this is a guy who's playing left field for the New York Yankees. This guy, this entitled asshole who thinks that everything needs to be handed to him. He's not been good for 4 years. 4 years. 4 straight years he's been bad. 4 straight years he's been bad. Yet he still thinks that he should be our starting center fielder and he should be in the top 3 in the batting order every time. I mean, that's entitlement. That's an asshole as far as I'm concerned. It's just, honestly, you read this, and if I were Brian Cashman, I'd be discussing his release because I don't want that in my locker room. I think he's a complete and utter trash can.
But that's the big problem, and I think Rob will agree that one of the big problems is one of the things holding this team back is a lot of the crying and the pettiness from the underperforming players that think that they're entitled just because they have the big contract that they deserve or they should automatically get a spot in the starting lineup. They should play the position that they want to play. Well, sorry, ass, it doesn't work that way. You have to earn your pinstripes. Right? That's a phrase that we all use. They always had their moment where they earned their Yankee pinstripes. When did Hicks actually do that? I don't think he has. A couple of home runs, in big spots. Maybe the Twins game, a few years ago where, in that big extra inning game, that was a big moment for him. I actually was sitting up watching that game, clapping for him that it was finally over. And so that, he was able to make the big play. So they need to just cut this kid. Just get rid of it. Let him go play golf and just let him just go off into another dimension. Rob, what's your thoughts on this whole mess?
That was my biggest issue with the offseason was, like, I can understand if he was just struggling. Okay, we don't want to give up on him, blah, blah, blah. But he literally got benched in the middle of a game for not playing. Like, he gave up on a play. And then he called out the manager. That should be enough to be like, we got to move on. Even if they said, we're cutting him, we're going to pay him not to play, and we're going to try and hope that Cabrera, Florial, or one of these minor league signings take off and they can be the left fielder. That's more reasonable than saying we're going to put Aaron Hicks back out there. I do think he can be a better player, but I don't want to see him out there anymore because you can't have what happened last year and then be like, all is forgiven, because the fans won't forgive you. The fans are, the second this guy messes up, and he will, It's either going to be an injury or a terrible at-bat or terrible at-bats, or he's going to make a misplay in the outfield again. And they're going to let him have it. And it's going to be rinse and repeat from last year. So they should have they tried to trade him. Nobody wanted him. They should have cut him and just moved forward with either Florial or I don't care, even bring back Brett Gardner at that point. But they could have just went with Cabrera, Florial, Ortega. One of these guys could take the job in spring, or they could have pushed harder to bring back Benintendi. But the fact that he's still here, that's my big issue. I couldn't care less if that didn't happen last year and it was just another bad year. All right, well, he's only getting paid $10 million. Let's see if he can bounce back. Probably not. But the fact that he went through all that, I don't feel, I wasn't having fun, or the fans did this, and he's blaming the fans, he's blaming the manager. And it's like, you know what? I had a great offseason. It was my fault. You should not need 3-4 months to tell you that it was your fault. You were underperforming. It wasn't Aaron Boone's fault you were underperforming. It was your own fault. So it took you 4 months to realize that. That's why it's been time to move on from him. I'm sick of talking about him, to be honest. I know I even brought it up as like more Hicks talk. I'm sick of talking about him as well, and the fans are sick of seeing him. So that should have been a message to the organization. Hey, get rid of him, because you're better off with a platoon of Florial and Cabrera at this point than you are with any Aaron Hicks in the outfield.
Yeah. The optics are weird as well, considering all the moves that the Yankees made midway through in order to move on from Aaron Hicks. I mean, Aaron Hicks got benched. Aaron Hicks didn't just get benched for that game against Tampa. It wasn't just that. We went and got Benintendi. Benintendi was our starting left fielder. We moved him from center to left because he couldn't play center field anymore. And Aaron Hicks is blaming the Yankees for that decision. He couldn't legitimately play center field anymore. He lost his range, and he wasn't making plays, and he wasn't getting. It's a large area in center field in Yankee Stadium, and he wasn't covering ground, and he was misplaying the ball, so we moved him to left field. Also, he didn't have any arm strength, so we moved him to left field to try and help that, and he's upset about that. But the thing is, we have tried to cater to him, but he continues to underperform. It's been 4 straight years, and normally, under any other organization or under any other business, if an employee underperforms for 4 straight years, they're no longer an employee. So I don't understand how the Yankees keep giving him more and more chances. I mean, what you read that article, right? Does that sound like a guy that actually genuinely blames himself? No, because he spent the entire article blaming everybody else, and for the fans, the Yankees, the manager, this, that, and the other. And then finally get the very last paragraph. But I blame myself for everything. Absolute bullshit. Don't bullshit a bullshitter. It's a very good term, and that's exactly what he's trying to do right there. He's entitled, man. He's still upset at the fans for booing him. He's still upset at Aaron Boone for benching him. Why can't he just be like, you know what? I played like SHIT. I need to get myself better here. I need to do better. I'm very, very sorry for what happened on September 9th. It's a terrible image. On Derek Jeter Day, of all things. That's another thing that really particularly gets my goat. So I just think that he should be arrested for war crimes, to be honest.
Yeah, and then we get this vitriol from fan base, that one of their biggest concern, one of the things that they keep begging the organization to do was move on, that we don't, with Stanton, right? Now, here's a player that when he got here, he struggled. He was having a hard time, really just, I think he was trying too hard instead of just playing his game. And he took every boo, every criticism. And what did he say when the media asked him about it? Well, if I was playing better, that wouldn't happen. I deserve all of this. I put this on myself. He didn't say, well, Boone made me swing and miss. He was accountable for his actions. He never hid from the cameras. He continued to work on it. Unfortunately, he's had some injury problems. That's not deniable. But at least he stood up and took his lumps like a man. But that's the guy that everybody wanted to trade first, was Stanton, because he's no good for he's holding up the organization. Get the frig out of here. Contracts like Hicks, Donaldson, and IKF, that's what's holding us back.
And it's funny because remember when Joe Torre moved A-Rod to 8th in the order in a playoff game? Or when Joe Girardi moved Jorge Posada down to the bottom of the order? Now, these are Hall of Fame caliber players and certainly Ring of Honor Yankees. And it's one thing moving them at the bottom of the order, right? But you know what? None of them caused this thing. They weren't happy about it, of course not. But they have pride and they actually have a resume. But the fact that Aaron Hicks is complaining about that, what is your resume, Aaron Hicks? You have done nothing to earn the fact that you'd be complaining about moving down the bottom of the order. You have absolutely no resume. None. It's absolutely embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. Everything about this is embarrassing. It's also, want to pick up on Ivan's point here. Cashman needs to be held accountable for making so many mistakes in roster construction. Instead, he gets another 4-year deal. Exactly. What kind of an image does that send out that you bring in a left fielder to replace him? You bring in an infielder from the minors to actually play left field to replace him as well, because Aaron Hicks was so incompetent and hurt that we started using Ozzie Cabrera. Then we obviously brought in Benintendi. We started using Florial. We started using all these different options in order to not have to put up with Aaron Hicks. Yet you're selling us that Aaron Hicks is our starting left fielder coming in spring? Are you what? What kind of a world do we live in where this is actually happening? It's crazy. And Brian Cashman has to be held accountable for that, because for his own incompetence, he's not brought in a left fielder. How could you go all spring and not bring in one left fielder to at least cover for Aaron Hicks? He's brought in nobody. And now he's bringing up all these ideas. We'll move Aaron Judge over there. Why don't we try these other things? No. How about you just go and bring in a left fielder?
No, the thing is with Cashman, I think what it all circles back to is he created this whole environment. He's the one that is constantly making excuses to the media, calling out the fan base. And what happens when your leader starts to do it? The people under you start to do it. Boone calling us out. Now Hicks calling us out. You know what? We're calling them out because we're tired of their bullshit. Welcome to the chat. Lynn, call the ambulance, Hicks. You stepped on the wrong beehive, and now the fan base will buzz you forever. Perfect. And while we do have Lynn in here, I do want to give out our announcement that we have. And starting opening day, we will be able to have the Pinstripe Chronicles coffee mug, and then right on the other side, it also has the Upper Deck logo as well with Chris and Lynn show on Sundays. So I want to thank my wife for creating this. It's awesome. It obviously holds a very hot cup of coffee. And so send us a message and pre-order yours if you want one. Let us know before opening day, then we will cover you the shipping on it. And so we just wanted to give a little bit of a thank you to everybody. Put some merch out, and there will be more coming up. There's more designs that we're working on, cups, some shirts. We're going to be working on a whole bunch of merch line. So send us a message. Let us know what you're interested in, and we will try to get that type of product out. So, but back to Cashman.
Well, first of all, big thank you to Ted's wife for putting that effort in and getting this thing out there. And it's a really nice thing to do, and great for us, great for the channel, and great for the fans who watch. It's a really cool cup. Bring that cup up again. Bring it closer to the screen. I mean, that's badass, man. That is badass.
Yeah. Got the whole logo, and then right on the other side, we're trying not to spill it on my computer here.
And you were talking about the idea of getting other ideas out there. Maybe use your tagline to get that in some merch.
Yes, yeah. The sign outs, the call outs that we do. It's going to be you want to personalize. We'll put your name on it. And so there's going to be a lot of options that could be used. And so we're very happy to get to this point, and that's all because of you guys that come and hang out with us every time we're on.
That's true.
Ivan,
how long have we been doing this for? 3 years?
we will be going into this. The opening day will be our 4th year that we're doing a show.
4 years, guys. 4 years. Shout out to Rob. Shout out to Tats. It's been an absolute honor to share the screen with you guys.
No, and yeah, Lynn wants an Uncle Tat's bumper sticker. That can be made. She could do it. So, but back to the baseball talk, and we had Rob this whole thing where it does circle back to Cashman. Do you think that what I was saying, where it trickles down, where if your leader thinks that they can get away with it, then everybody else takes a stab at it too? Do you think that's what we're really seeing?
Only with the few players, though, because it's usually like the same person that we're talking about every single time. It's Aaron Hicks, because you don't see Aaron Judge do this. You don't see Giancarlo Stanton do this. Rizzo doesn't do it. Cole doesn't do it. Well, to a degree, Cole does it, but Rodon's not going to make excuses. He never has. Cortez doesn't do it. Like, you're looking at the main players, the main guys that are going to contribute. Torres, even, like, he'll make excuses here and there, but he also holds himself accountable from time to time. But it's usually Aaron Hicks that's doing it. So it's been the problem for a while, and that's why we've all wanted to move on from the GM. Not because personally I don't think he's the worst GM in the game, but it's been 25 years is too long. So you have players, certain players that are following that same kind of, I guess, motto of make excuses. Then you got to get rid of him. But if the GM is doing it and Aaron Hicks is a Brian Cashman guy, they're not going to get rid of him. Had they gotten rid of him, it would have told me that they were ready to do something different this offseason. Even just that, even if you don't make another signing, just cutting Aaron Hicks tells me you're not going to let the same stuff happen this year. But they kept him around. So that like I said earlier, that was my biggest issue with this entire offseason was keeping him. I would rather keep Donaldson, because he didn't even do that. He caused issues, but he did not do that last year. He didn't come out and say, I can't believe Aaron Boone did that. He's been around too long, and he's had a hell of a lot better career than Aaron Hicks.
Yep.
He's more entitled than Aaron Hicks is, but not even Donaldson's going like, I think it's the fans' fault. So the fact that this guy's still here and we're going to have him for 2 more years after this, it's very telling about how they're going to let certain things slide, and certain players that should not be allowed to do that are doing that.
Preach. That's so true, man. That's the biggest issue. You're actually right. Had they just cut him or moved him, traded him for a single A prospect, I don't care. You just remove that bad seed, that bad smell from the locker room.
Yep.
You're already sending a message that there is some accountability here. There is some performance standards here. This is a level of what we're expecting. That makes a statement. It makes a statement to the fans that they're looking to make a change and they're looking to get better. But the fact that the statement is, we're going to bring back the guy who we traded for to get a replacement in at the deadline, and we brought in somebody for a shortstop from AAA to go play left field because you couldn't do it anymore, and now you're supposed to sell us that it's his job to lose now? It's impossible to sell. Unless it says to me exactly what Rob's point is that if you're a Cashman guy, then you've basically got a lifetime contract. And it's wrong, man. There's no accountability in the building if you are a Brian Cashman guy.
No, and as timid as Torrey was, with when he was with the core guys in the dynasty years, they all held themselves accountable because he held himself accountable. But when you look even further up the chain, you had George on the top staring at everybody. He kept a close eye on his product to make sure that they conducted themselves professionally. They held themselves accountable. And what did it turn into? Production. Turned into wins. Turned into championships. That era is fading away very quick. And it's a damn shame. It really is. Because we had this the baby bombers in 2016, 17. we were ready. We were all ready to celebrate the next start of a dynasty. We were ready for it. We saw it. But when you don't have, George hovering over everybody, who barely had to say anything, just looking at you, and it's no. I know Hank was very good at trying to emulate his father. Hal, not so much. So if you don't have proper leadership, you don't have the success that comes with it.
Well, they didn't need someone to scream at them and tell you suck at your job. But think about what happened after 2017. I know Lynn's in the chat and she loves Joe Girardi. I don't think he's the greatest manager ever. I think he's incredibly overrated. However, even I was advocating for him to get one more year in 2018. But just think of when this became Cashman's team, it really became his team because he fired the manager who gave you your best season since 2009. You let him go despite taking a team that had zero expectations to within one game of the ALCS. And then you screwed with your potential, your World Series, I'm sorry. You screwed with your potential future franchise catcher. Gary Sanchez was off to a fantastic start in his career. And then what happened? They changed everything around the next year and he became irrelevant. The only player that they didn't screw up was Aaron Judge. I mean, they screwed with Severino got hurt. Greg Bird was a future piece, but he was getting hurt a lot. And they just kept screwing with things to make this more Brian Cashman's team. So from that point on, it just became whatever he says goes. And a lot of players that could have panned out didn't pan out. So again, this goes back to the point that we've been making for a while. It has been time to move on for quite some time from Brian Cashman, not because I think he's so bad, but because 25 years is too long. But guess what? He's going to get 30 because he's got 4 more years after this season. So that's how the Yankees feel about him. And that's why, honestly, I really don't want to complain about it anymore because we're going to be stuck with it. We're stuck with this now. They're not letting him go. So, but 25 years is far too long, and it's annoying that this is what we're going to have to deal with for another 4 years.
I mean, the way I look at it is like it was almost a blessing and a curse, the success that we had in 2017, because then Brian Cashman kind of started to feel himself. He's like, whoa, yeah, I built this thing all by myself. And then he then took over the whole freaking thing. He took over the whole operation. Then he brought in his manager. And then he wanted to change the whole locker room and make sure it was a locker room of kumbaya and holding hands and singing songs by a campfire. And I'm not even being hyperbolic necessarily because you just read what Aaron Hicks is saying there. He's crying and upset that fans are booing him. And then you hear all these rumors that players were upset last year, but fans booing them. That's because the culture that's been cultivated in the locker room, and it started with the culture that Brian Cashman asked to be brought in here. This new happy-go-lucky, we're all friends, we're all family here nonsense, and that's when things started to change, man. And then that's when the excuses started to come in. I'd never seen so many excuses until after 2017. Brian Cashman has been an excuse machine. He has so many excuses, you could actually make a Hallmark section out of it. Like you could actually go to Hallmark and get a section of Cashman excuses and get a nice card, and there's hundreds of them now. And he's been doing this since 2017. And that's why it's kind of a blessing and a curse, is because like we did so well, but then it meant all these changes that have happened, and then riding certain players who haven't performed, and then all these kind of moves that just haven't worked. And a lot of it comes from Brian Cashman starting to feel himself in 2017. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It wasn't broke in 2017. Yep. Things were looking great. That was the most happy I've been as a Yankee fan in a long time, was watching that fun team. And then he basically changed everything within it. Changed the manager, made it even more analytics based, and then they started to mess around with Gleyber Torres, and they started to mess around with Gary Sanchez, and they started to mess around with this. They started to feel themselves. And Ivan has a really good point. I think Thompson was the guy that got away. He managed spring training. Exactly, man. Rob Thompson was a guy who had certain he had the Yankee expectations right down pat. Like he would remind people who are stringing out a line that's like, this is not the Yankee way. We've got certain standards here. He maintained those standards. He did the spring trainings. He drilled them. He worked them, and he was an absolute beast out there. Derek Jeter loved him. Joe Torre trusted him. Joe Girardi trusted him intrinsically, and Hal Steinbrenner loved him. So the fact that we passed him by to bring in an ESPN announcer and not a very good player in Aaron Boone to do the management just because he's a nice guy and he'll take orders from Brian Cashman. That's when things started to change, man. That's when it all started to change. So it's a blessing and a curse.
It's almost like you start to hate the fact that he hit that winning home run against the Red Sox.
Oh yeah,
that's what, if it wasn't for that home run, we wouldn't know who he was. But no, I think the other part of where Cashman is just so out of touch is this merry-go-round of where everybody's going to be playing. I think that is a major problem. When you don't have when you don't know what you're going to be doing day to day, it's very difficult to prepare. It doesn't matter how athletic you are. You're talking about very few people that can do it. That can play a different position every day.
Yeah.
LeMahieu's one of those. Ben Zobrist was probably one of the best at it. It didn't matter. You probably could have been a catcher and been successful. But when you start talking about moving this guy here and this, Judge is going to be playing right, left, center, like you said, like he's not going to know what he's doing. Cabrera, we don't know what we're doing with him. They still haven't figured out what the hell they're doing with Volpe. Now he might be playing third base. Well, put him in left field for freaking sake. It's like, come on, make up your mind. Where are these kids playing?
They've already announced that, though, that all the shortstops are playing different positions. But isn't that what we've asked for, though? Like, you can't have 6 shortstops play one position. Somebody has to move. And I think this really is more important to Volpe and Peraza. Who's the shortstop and who's going to have to move to second? If it's Volpe at shortstop, then Peraza's going to second or third. I think second base is most likely because we saw him play there last year, even for, a few games. Volpe can be a second baseman. If that's just fine. I think he should stick at shortstop because I'm pretty sure he's played there mostly in his minor league career, where Peraza was playing all over the place. But Peraza's also shown that he can handle shortstop at the major league level. So that's why they're doing this, is because they know these two are the future. IKF is not going to be here past this year. Neither is Donaldson, and LeMahieu is going to be your rotating piece. Torres might not even be here past this year. It's really about Volpe and Peraza. Who's the shortstop? Who's going to have to move to second or third? So this is the perfect time to try that out. I have zero issue with that, with Volpe playing third base this spring or Peraza playing third base, because if you can find out that one of these guys can play that position, great, because then you have no issue about your future, and you can even keep LeMahieu at a certain position. You can keep LeMahieu at third. Next year, Peraza can be your second baseman. Volpe can be your shortstop. There should be zero issue with that, with Volpe playing third in the spring. It's not like he's been a major leaguer at any point in his career. If he can make the switch, great. If not, he's a shortstop, and Peraza can make the switch, because Peraza's got a hell of a lot more ability, in my opinion, to move than Volpe does. So they got to make that decision, and now's the perfect time to do it because you have so many shortstops. You can't put them all at one position. So if Volpe can play second or third, great. If it's Peraza, great. I have zero issue with that.
Lynn's got a good point. If DJ's healthy, which he is, he's been balling out apparently. He needs to be playing every game. He does need to be playing every game, and I want him playing every game at third base, unless Glaber's moved. But as for Volpe, I love Peraza at shortstop. I think Peraza is my guy at shortstop. I think he's such a brilliant fielder. He's so smooth, and everything that he does is very graceful, very natural. He just looks like an absolute pro there already. I would give him the job. Volpe, I think, is going to be a good second baseman. I'm a little bit surprised that Aaron Boone immediately announced that he's going to move Ozzie back into the infield. Little bit surprised there. I thought that Ozzy really provided a lot of value as a guy that could play right field, left field, and the infield. A little bit surprised at Aaron Boone there, but I mean, it's Aaron Boone, so there you go. But there's some really good points here. This chat has been absolutely on fire here, so Tats, fire them up.
All right, we got Michael H. Welcome. Moving young players out of their natural position that they have played their entire life is a horrible idea. I don't know if it's a horrible idea. I think to Rob's point where he's right is you want players that are going to be able to be versatile and be able to have some changing parts to help get guys rest days, because we know that's the new thing is they schedule in these days where everybody gets a day off. So you're going to want players that are going to be able to fulfill that position that are competent. So my issue is when you get players that are not built for that. Not everybody can be a multi-dimensional player. I think that's what it really comes down to. We saw it with Torres, where he played a phenomenal year at second base. They moved him back to shorts. They moved him to shortstop because that's what they drafted him as. He was freaking terrible. They moved him back to second base. It took him a lot of the year to even get his rhythm back and get his footwork where it needed to be. So I'm hoping this year, if he stays at second base, we might see that positive year again from Torres. But, that's why I don't think every player should be moved, but some players.
That's a great point, Tats. It really is dependent on the player. On the face of it, yeah, it's good to have flexibility, right? But you don't want to mess with their with their development and their footwork and everything that they've learned, because they're trying to be the best at what the position that they're already spent their careers playing in. So, like for instance, some people are more versatile than others. Like Gleyber Torres, much better second base, but moving him back to shortstop was a terrible idea, and it destroyed him psychologically. Because it's a different mindset. It's also a different footwork, different way of touching the bag. And then obviously you move to the right side of the bag instead of the left side of the bag. And obviously turning double plays are different if you're a shortstop or a second baseman. So there's different. It's a completely different skill set that you learn. Third and short, well, at least it's both on the same kind of side of the infield. So it's still down to footwork, but you can kind of get there. But the ball travels at a different way when it goes to short than it does at third. So it's a different mindset, and then some people can do it. Like DJ LeMahieu can play every single position in the infield apart from shortstop. So it's not everyone can do just a short to third or short to second. It very much dependent on the player. So I don't want to mess around too much. If someone's brilliant at one position, I keep him at that one position and just develop him and work on that. Like Peraza, for instance, I think he's a shortstop all day long. But I think Volpe, I get the sense that he can be versatile. I do get the sense. Ozzy Cabrera is versatile. So it just depends on the person. One thing is, Lynn's got a good point here. Michael moving Judge to, she says right field. I think it's left field she meant. Judge to left field is a horrible idea. It is. It's an absolutely disgraceful idea.
Rob, are we overthinking the versatility of players as opposed to the traditional, this is your position?
Well, my whole point about Peraza and Volpe is that somebody has to move. Like that's the whole. It's not because we want somebody to be able to play multiple positions. No, one of them has to change positions. So that's the whole point. I don't care who it is. I just want them to know who it's going to be sooner or later. I don't want them to have this merry-go-round for 2-3 years of one plays short, the other plays second. Then tomorrow it's going to be the other way around. They need to make a decision and stick with it. Either Volpe's your future at second or third or short, or Peraza's your future at second or third or short, because you've invested too much into these two. You've not traded them for multiple players. You've announced that this is the future of your middle infield. They said that, or Hal said that in the beginning of the offseason. So that tells me one of them's moving to second. Who is it? That's all I need to know. I'm not asking for Peraza to be able to play all positions and be Ben Zobrist or Ozzy Cabrera. I'm just asking for one to be the shortstop and one to be the second or third baseman. But they got to figure that out. That's all I'm talking about when it comes to those two players. If they want IKF to be a roving player in the infield, fine. If they want DJ to do that, fine. Cabrera can play everywhere, fine. But Peraza and Volpe, they're too important to the future. They have to stick with one position. And if on an emergency situation they can switch, great. But this has nothing to do with their versatility. It's just more of you're investing way too much, or not way too much, but you're investing a ton into these guys moving forward. You have to have a plan for them because IKF and these guys are not going to be here next year. Like Cabrera will be, but we know where DJ is going to be all over the place. We know IKF, Donaldson, Torres even probably won't be here next season. Volpe and Peraza will be here next year and many, many years after. So they have to have a plan for them, which is why I'm fine with them trying him out at third. But I don't think he's going to be the third baseman. I think he'll be a second baseman.
Why is IKF here at all?
No, I can see the alignment where we know Donaldson's going to start at third. But in an ideal world, if I made the decision, I'd have LeMahieu at third. That would be his spot. I'd have Peraza at second, Volpe or Cabrera at second base, and Rizzo at first. So, it's I would think that Torres would be the one gone, and FJ brings up that I've seen other Yankee content that's now bemoaning the idea of trading Gleyber. They are arguing that it's unfair and the Yankees have mistreated him. It's ridiculous. I think Torres really got an unfair shake with all the shuffling. I think moving him to shortstop that year completely threw his whole career offline. And I don't think he's been able to fully recover from that. We saw some flashes of it last year and hoping it all comes together this year, provided that they don't mess him up again by just leave him at second base. If you're going to hold on to him, just have him play second. If you want these young kids to play second, you got to move them to another team. It's not being unfair. It's what's going to benefit the Yankees overall long term. Is Torres' time gone? Is it time to move on and let one of these young kids, take that second base spot? It just might be that time to do it.
Brian Cashman's the only GM where, the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He's like, if it's broke, I won't fix it. And that's him, man. Like, we had a really nice third baseman in Gio Urshela, and he fixed it. Why? There's no need to fix it. You had a perfectly good third baseman in Gio Urshela. Gleyber Torres, excellent second baseman. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to move him to short. Why? You can't play shortstop. I mean, and then he moved them back. Oh, shit. Oh, I got that wrong. Sorry. I mean, listen, man. That's what Brian Cashman is. Like, I almost need everyone just to be excellent at their positions, never to get hurt, and for the love of God, don't allow Brian Cashman to mess around with them because only bad things will happen. IKF, Gold Glove third baseman. I'll move him to short. Great idea. That went up. That worked a freaking treat. So, this is what he's doing, man. So, going back to Gleyber Torres, it was Brian Cashman that screwed up his trajectory. He really did, man. He did well getting the trade in. He allowed him to be himself. He developed. He's been great. He moved him to that tremendous second baseman. Things were great. He was batting over 300. He was hitting 31 home runs. He was looking great. But then they started to mess around with him, moved him to short, completely destroyed him. And then they started to change his batting stance. And then again, instead of a guy that could hit to all fields, they focused purely on him being a cool hitter that's going to hit home runs, a all or nothing guy. And that was a destruction to his career as well, because again, he's a dude that can hit to all fields. He's a really good line drive hitter. But then Brian Cashman had to make sure that he has the uppercut swing. And then he took 70% off his freaking batting average, and then he stopped hitting home runs altogether. And then the excuses started to come in, and then they started to excuse the fact that Gleyber Torres wasn't running out to first base. He wasn't trying hard enough at times because, again, the culture in the locker room. And so, yeah, it's partly on Gleyber Torres, the fact he sometimes just mails in games. Like he just jogs to first base sometimes makes the wrong read when he's at second. He doesn't have a high IQ as a baseball player. All that is facts, but I mean, Brian Cashman just destroyed what was developing there, and I think we should trade him. I think it's time. I think we've got too many infielders. It's a kind of a hodgepodge, this infield. This infield was broken after the season, and Brian Cashman, in his infinite wisdom, decided to keep it exactly the same. So it's really embarrassing.
He tried to trade Torres too. Yeah. Remember,
exactly. He tried to trade in the locker room.
Yeah, and it's upsetting Torres too because he's kind of had that hanging over his head. So maybe they should move him. I don't want to because he's probably our fourth best hitter, but you might have to for the sake of we don't want to have this hanging over players' heads. This is an issue that the GM created, and that's what you were just talking about, Donald. He did this. He did it. He took a player that was fine at second. He said, we have to pay Garrett Cole, so we can't bring back Didi Gregorius, so we're just going to move Torres to short, and we're always going to be okay. It wasn't. And because of that, they had to make a switch end of the season the following year just to realign the infield again. And then his idea to fix that was, let's just bring in two third basemen to play third and short instead of just sticking with what we had, which would have been a second baseman playing third and a third baseman playing short, and we would have had the same results. This all points back to that awful Twins trade. And that everything is pointing back to the Twins trade. Like the way they mistreated Torres, the way that they completely screwed up what they had in the infield. Like and it's correlating now because the payroll is being affected $31 million, and it'll be $4 million next year when they buy out Donaldson. So what is that? $35 million is being used towards two players that are probably not going to be regulars on this team this year. That is another blemish on the GM.
Facts. And we've got some really good comments in the chat. FJ, good to see you, Luca, my co-host. Salute. That trade, the Josh Donaldson trade, has completely destroyed the balance in the infield. And it's such a mess now. But, Brian Cashman keeps talking about the process. My process is excellent. But that's just a cover. When he says my process, it's a cover for the fact that he doesn't want to take accountability for his mistakes that he makes. So he's just going to keep saying, my process is great. The process is great. But how great is a process if you trade for a gold glove third baseman and then move him to shortstop and he can't play shortstop? That's not a good process. If that's your process, then it's not sound thinking. My process is to bring in $50 million on a 38-year-old third baseman and then trade away Gio Urshela, who actually has upside and would cost a tenth of that. Again, if that's your process, then it's a flawed process. And he doesn't – honestly, he's so arrogant that he refuses to see where he goes wrong. Like, we were talking about how terrible the idea was of moving Gleyber Torres to shortstop. Gleyber Torres was so bad at shortstop that it was costing us games all year long, but he refused to make that move until 2 weeks before the end of the season. Why was that? Because Brian Cashman refused to admit publicly that he screwed it up. And that's why IKF was picked up, his options picked up this year, because he's not going to admit that he screwed that up. That's why Aaron Hicks is still here in left field, because he's not going to admit that he screwed it up, spending him 7 years. And that's what I'm talking about. So we keep saying this process is my process is great. This is a great process. All it is a massive cover and a shield for him to not take any accountability for anything. He's just going to keep writing it out there because he doesn't want to admit the fact that he has cost us so many great opportunities just with poor decision making. All of this is on Brian Cashman.
Yep, and I think that what they need to do is they need to tell Cashman no more trading with the Twins, right? Because that's how we ended up with this Hicks mess to begin with. Let's remember he came from the Twins, and no more pitches from the A's. I think those two things would make Cashman a much better GM if he just stays away from those organizations because we always get that they're toxic. We never get the right player from them. So
He needs to surround himself with better players.
Alex has brought up the point here that I made like 10 minutes ago that they tried to make Torres a pool hitter.
Yeah.
Instead of a guy that could hit to all fields. It was a terrible, terrible mistake.
But you think about like the people that Cashman surrounded himself with. It's all like his guys, like Michael Fishman. What did he? There was an interview with him, I think, with Mark Feinsand recently, where he said he's getting into like fantasy swimming or something, or fantasy surfing. And he's like, I know nothing about it, but I'm going to give it my all because that's what I do for everything. I put in 100%. I just look into guys' tendencies and how they surf to put in for my fantasy. We're talking about fantasy surfing now. Like, and this is our assistant GM who's saying that he looks at analytics, but this is the guy that's giving Cashman the input to let's trade our already fine third baseman just to get another shortstop that we didn't need. So like you could have made that, like I go back to it. I hate going back to the Sam Donaldson trade, but you could have simply traded the Texas Rangers, Sanchez, Abreu, and like another piece for Trevino and IKF before they traded IKF to the Twins, and we wouldn't have had to be stuck with Donaldson's contract. It was so simple. It was staring at you, and you could have said, look, there was a lockout. We didn't have a lot of time. That would have been the time to make an excuse. And I would have been like, all right, I don't love it, but it is what it is, right? You had the lockout. You got to rush back into the offseason and get ready for spring.
Right there. You don't have to take on $50 million of Josh Donaldson, and that $50 million can be used elsewhere. That's all we needed to do. Terrible. You're spot on.
So it's a lot of things that go on to Cashman, but you look at who he surrounds himself with, and now you're seeing it. This is still a really, really good team, but here we are as we're getting ready for spring, and we're still talking about the GM, and we're still getting angry about it. This is what I can't stand because he's doing so many things that's making the fan base angry. We should be predicting players' stat lines or saying what's our lineup going to be, what's the what's the bullpen? Oh, who would you use here? Instead, we're still talking about Aaron Hicks. 4 years we've been on this. We just talked about this. We've been doing this for 4 years. For 4 years we've been complaining about Aaron Hicks. I'm sick of it. But this is what our GM has caused. It all points back to him. So it's, once again, let's repeat ourselves again. It's been time to move on. 25 years is too long, but 4 more years after this. So get ready. He's been the GM my entire life, guys. Basically, my entire life. Tats has been through his entire tenure. Donald's been through his entire tenure. Some of the people in our chat, their entire fandom has been with Brian Cashman as the GM. Others, like Luca and Alex, have not had that. Well, they have actually, but they didn't have the luxury of saying Stick Michael was here. I was very, very young, but my entire fandom, Brian Cashman, it's time to move on. Yeah. And it's been time to move on. The biggest mistake they could have made, which they did make, was giving him an extension. They should have just given Boone the 1 year with an option to correlate with Cashman, the rest of Cashman's contract, and say, this is it. This is your last year. If it doesn't work, it's time to change things up. But they didn't do that. So we're going to get more of this. But I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that Sabian is the one that can save this. Because I think Minaya is just another Cashman guy. That whole dinner conversation they had.
That's
that whole
right.
dinner, yeah. But I'm hoping Sabian's the one that can maybe smack some sense into his bald head.
That's a good point, Rob. Because Minaya was like, tell me about your success, Brian. And Brian's like, I've lost count of my success. I'm just
well, no, I think the upside to this weekend is we actually will have a spring training game on Saturday. So when we come back here on Tuesday, we'll actually have something legitimately to break down and see who we did get to see on the field. What pitches we can break down, the hitters, how do they look? And it's only going to be one game. We're not going to get too crazy and go, well, he swung and missed, cut him. No, it's
unless you're Josh Donaldson.
Well, it depends on who it is. But also, after we sign off here,
on a positive note, Clark Schmidt looks tremendous.
Yes.
He looks really good. He's been working on a cutter, and it's really upped his trajectory a little bit. So keep an eye out on him for the fifth spot. Maybe we can discuss him on Tuesday. I would like to try and move on to more positive things, but
Yep.
like it is quite ironic, as Rob, you brought that up, and this is exactly what I mentioned on Tuesday's show, Taz. We've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and the main topics of discussion: Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, Aaron Hicks, and the excuses are all still there. How is that possible that we're still talking about it 4 years later? Nothing has changed.
It's really sad. It's so sad.
Insane. It's insane.
But after we sign off here, if you still have time in your day, go and head out to the Morning Brew Show on YouTube. I will be heading over there in a little bit to join a panel with Hector and I believe Joe from the shift. So we're going to be talking some more baseball because I just cannot get enough of it.
Yeah,
but
we're gonna get Hector on our show very, very soon.
We will be teaming up with Hector very shortly. So as always, wear your pinstripe your pride and play hard.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.